Hey, this is John, and today we're going to take a look at the Pixel Oppilas wireless shutter remote control. Now all this is a wireless shutter release for your digital camera, and the reason why this is nice, other than the features that it has, the fact that it does everything you'd want it to, is the price. This usually goes for about 20 to 30 bucks on Amazon, depending on which one you look at. And for example, for my Panasonic, the Panasonic branded wired remote control, so it's not even wireless, is $75 online, whereas this wireless version is about $25. So it's a great value, it works really well, and we're going to take a look at what comes in the box and how everything works. Alright, now let's take a look at what's in the box with this Pixel Oppilas wireless shutter release. This happens to be the L1 version for Panasonic cameras, so the connecting cable that you'll get is for Panasonic cameras. There's a bunch of different models that work with different brands of cameras, and if you go to Pixel's website, you can see which one that you need that'll work with your camera. So that connecting cable I was talking about, all it does is it connects the receiver to the camera, and it's this cable right here. This is the receiver that you get. It takes two AAA batteries, and it can mount on a hot shoe, but it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't use it for power. It has its own power from the batteries. And then this is the actual wireless shutter release. Alright, now we're going to take a look at how this thing works, and it's very simple once you understand it, but it may not work the way you expect it to if you just try to use these different features on the remote. For example, the high-speed burst on the remote isn't really related to the high-speed burst mode of your camera. So selecting it on here isn't going to put your camera in burst mode. All it's going to do is just take pictures at a certain frequency from the remote. So if I hold this, it's in high-speed burst and it's in single drive mode on the camera, you can hear it kind of taking pictures. And all it's doing is the remote is just taking a picture at a specified interval, and you can hear it's really not that fast. For example, on my camera, if I put it into high-speed burst, sorry about this. Let's see here. The burst rate on my camera is about 6 frames a second. So you can hear that. I'll take it out of this. Okay. So I find that the burst mode isn't really all that useful. If your camera doesn't have its own burst mode, then you can use that to take multiple pictures. What the bulb mode does is it holds the shutter button down with one press, and then it releases it with a second press. This is actually a good way to use the high-speed burst on your camera because it'll replicate holding the shutter button down. So the camera's in burst mode now, the remote is in bulb mode, and what will happen is when I press the button and let go, it'll continue to hold the button itself because it's in bulb mode, and the camera will take pictures in burst mode, and then when I press the button again, it'll stop. Okay. Now, if I put my camera in bulb mode, on the camera itself, then bulb mode here works perfectly. So you press the button, the exposure starts on the camera, and because it's in bulb mode, it'll continue exposing until you press the button again and it turns off, which is great for really long exposure shots. And the last feature is the self-timer. And I'm not really sure why you have a self-timer on a wireless remote control, because the whole point of this is that you can be in front of the camera or wherever you need to be and take the picture when you want. The self-timer on here, it's kind of weird. It only lasts somewhere between 4 and 5 seconds. Take this out of drive mode. And you can see, you'll get an indicator on the remote. And it takes the picture. I haven't found any use for this, but maybe that's something that'll be useful to you. The other thing that you can do is if you put your camera on the self-timer mode and then you just use this in the normal mode, take a picture, then the normal delay will occur on your camera. So all in all, this is a really nice system. It'll do everything that you want it to do. It's just a matter of kind of learning what each feature does on the remote and how to apply that to your camera. There's really no limitation that you'll have using this system with your camera. It's just that, like I said before, these modes aren't really used to their full potential. You know, the drive mode's probably not as fast as the drive mode on your camera. The self-timer doesn't have as many options, or it's not as long as the self-timer on your camera. It feels like a high-quality system. It feels well put together. The only two complaints I have are actually both related to the remote. The shutter button, there's no off switch, and so if the shutter button gets pressed in your bag, it's going to use up a little bit of battery trying to send the signal and also lighting up that LED. Whereas the receiver has a power button, so you can turn this off. And now if the shutter button on this unit gets pressed, it's not going to do anything. And then the other issue that I have is that it'd be kind of nice if the shutter button on the remote could be held down. The way it works when even if you have it on the high-speed drive mode on your camera, where if you press the shutter button on the camera and hold it down, it's going to take pictures as long as you hold the button down. On this, though, the button releases automatically. So when you press it down, it'll take a couple pictures just for that initial burst, and then it lets go. And it'd be kind of nice if when you hold the button down, it continues to hold the button down on the camera for as long as you're doing it here. But that's not how it works. But as I said before, you can get around that just by putting it in bulb mode, and then you press the button, and then it'll take pictures as long as you wait, and you press the button again, and it'll stop. So I think it's a real nice system. Works really well. It's much cheaper than the first-party alternatives, made by the manufacturers of the camera. Works really well. I haven't had any problems with it in terms of its functionality, and so I recommend that you take a look at it. Thanks.